So last week we had the privilege of hearing from Grant Fredrickson. He shared the story of Elisha and the widow, an amazing example of God's miraculous provision. He also shared his own story of God's answers to prayer and miracles in his life. And he told us about the ministry that God has him involved in on Salt Spring Island, where the work is often very, very challenging. So first, from the story of Elisha and the widow. This widow went to Elisha asking for help because the creditors were after her, threatening to take her 2 boys away as slaves. So she was desperate. From this story, Grant gave us 3 principles for facing really difficult situations. One of my favorite quotes from last week was, "Notice, God didn't just go zing and fix the problem. There was a process involved, and here's how it went for the widow. Number 1, evaluate your resources." When the woman told Elisha about her desperate situation, he responded with 2 questions. How can I help you? That's pretty nice. And tell me, what do you have in your house? She answered him by saying, your servant has nothing here at all, except a little oil. So basically, she was saying that she's used everything up. There's nothing left to eat or to feed her sons. She's destitute with creditors breathing down her neck. I have often heard myself say or think a similar thing. I got nothing. There's nothing I can see around me right now of any value, nothing in my experience. I can list a bunch of things I do not have. Life turned out different than I expected, and I got nothing. But this story tells me that God is not as depressed about our situations as we are. He has more ideas. He can provide for us in unexpected ways, even using our little, meager resources as we offer them to him. Think about what Jesus did with those 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Grant told us how he had a vehicle trouble and asked God what to do about it. So as he looked around and evaluated his resources, he remembered that a friend of his had actually given him a pickup truck. And this leads me to another of my favorite quotes from last week. We're good, we are good. Back to the island truck. So that quote, when he said that, I imagined, what's an island truck? Maybe there's flowers painted on the side. Maybe there's a little garden growing in the back. But actually, it wasn't that. It was that the tires were bald and it didn't do well in the snow. But it ran, and actually that truck got him here last week. And then number 2, ask God to do what to do with what you have. So Elisha told the widow, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. God wants to meet us in whatever our particular situation is, as we humbly call out to him and ask for help. And he doesn't discriminate by how much or how little we have. So next, number 3, adjust your life in obedience to God with what he provides. And this might involve humbling ourselves, and it definitely involves cooperating with God. As this widow followed Elisha's instructions, closed the door, and began pouring her little amount of oil into those jars, that oil filled all the jars she had collected, and it didn't stop flowing till the last jar was full. For some reason, God didn't just go zing and solve all her trouble without her involvement. He allowed her to experience his miracle up close by participating in it as she followed his instructions, and it was very exciting for her and faith-building. There's a number of times in the Bible where God miraculously fixed things, but he still required the recipient to participate with him somehow. So Naaman was instructed to wash in the Jordan River 7 times, and then he would be healed of his leprosy. He didn't feel like doing that, but he humbled himself and did it, and then he was healed. And the priests carrying the ark had to step into the flowing river carrying the ark. This was what they were told to do, and they did it, and then the water parted and everyone could cross. So Grant, that is, went on to tell us about some of the situations on Salt Spring Island that make ministry extremely challenging. I'm sure you can remember some of that stuff he shared. Times when he very much felt the lack of his own strength and the need for God's help. And that leads me to the 3rd of my favorite quotes from last week. If we just do things we can do on our own strength, then we have no need to see God do miracles, things that are supernatural and beyond our abilities. So if he calls us to do something that seems impossible, and we've discerned it to be from God, we'll be robbed of seeing the hand of God do miracles in our lives if we don't follow him and trust in his action and provision. Sometimes God allows or even guides us into situations that are actually too hard for us to navigate on our own. And we have to lean into Jesus. And that's how we get to experience him in a bigger way and see him at work. It builds our faith and the faith of people around us.